This is allulose, and I've been eating it every single day. Allulose looks like sugar, tastes like sugar, it even bakes like sugar. And technically, it is a sugar, but inside the human body, it behaves very differently from conventional table sugar. And these metabolic differences are why some people consider it to be possibly the healthiest sweetener available. So is allulose worth adding to your routine? Let's investigate. This video is sponsored by Bellicon. Hey guys, it's Robin and welcome to the Science of Self-Care, where we fall in love with the practice of taking care of ourselves so we can live better longer. I'm so excited for this video because today we are reviewing my over 1 year of eating allulose every single day. To say that I am obsessed with allulose would be an understatement, and in this video I'm going to explain a bit about what is happening in our bodies when we eat allulose. There's still a lot that's unknown, but in this video I'm going to try to cover what we do know. I'm also going to share my personal experience eating allulose every single day, and that means I'm going to share some recipes, some things that I've noticed in my body and my mind, and a very interesting experience where I really put allulose to the test. So if you're curious to learn more about this rare sugar that is potentially the most blood sugar friendly sugar out there, then keep watching. Part 1. The research on allulose thus far. First off, what exactly is allulose? Allulose, also called D-Allulose, is a monosaccharide, meaning it consists of a single sugar molecule. And other examples of monosaccharides are fructose and glucose. Allulose actually has a very similar form to fructose, and it can actually be made from fructose using special enzymes, and this is how it's produced commercially. But allulose is actually also naturally found in our environment in figs, raisins, and maple syrup at very, very small amounts, almost negligible amounts, which is why it's often referred to as a rare sugar. But even though allulose and fructose are very similar molecules, they are metabolized completely differently in the body. So what happens when we eat allulose is that it goes through our stomach and into the small intestines, where approximately 70% is absorbed into our body. That is ultimately taken to the kidneys, where it's filtered out and excreted in our urine. So we're not actually using it for energy because it exits the body in our pee, which is quite fascinating. But while it's in our body, it does seem to have some unique effects which relate to blood sugar. And to quickly review with the other monosaccharides, glucose and fructose, glucose is also absorbed into the blood, but it is used readily for energy or stored as glycogen in our muscles, and fructose is actually processed in the liver. So both these other sugars have completely different metabolic pathways that actually allow us to use those sugars for energy, meaning that they have caloric value. In the United States, allulose is assigned a caloric value of roughly 0.4 calories per gram, so you get about 1/10 as much energy from allulose as you do from table sugar. But even though we don't get many calories from allulose, it does seem to have some interesting effects on our body. Across multiple studies, the most consistent finding is that consuming roughly 5 to 10 grams of allulose alongside other carbohydrates can actually reduce the resulting glucose rise of eating those carbohydrates. Very interestingly, allulose does not seem to have much effect on our blood sugar when it is consumed by itself. And that might give us some keys to what's going on in our body, which is something that's still being researched. So how might allulose work? There are 3 potential mechanisms based on research. Mechanism number 1 is that it actually reduces carbohydrate digestion. So allulose may weakly inhibit sucrase, which is the enzyme that breaks down sucrose, table sugar. So if carbohydrates are broken down more slowly, then glucose may enter our bloodstream more gradually. Then there's mechanism number 2, which is altered glucose absorption. This is my favorite hypothesis. So cell and animal studies suggest that allulose may actually influence the transporters that move glucose across the intestinal wall. So either by binding directly to the transporters and competing with glucose, or maybe even influencing the expression of glucose transporters. Basically, when allulose is present, we actually absorb fewer of the glucose molecules that we consume. And mechanism number 3 is that allulose may alter our gut hormones. And this is perhaps the most discussed mechanism, particularly around GLP-1. And you might know GLP-1 from drugs like Ozempic, which is a GLP-1 agonist. So it actually behaves like GLP-1 in the body. Eating allulose is not the same as taking a GLP-1 agonist like Ozempic. However, it is hypothesized that allulose might actually increase our natural release of GLP-1. In one human study, 25 grams of allulose delivered directly into the stomach increased GLP-1 levels alongside two other gut hormones, CCK and PYY. And it is possible that one, two, or all three of these mechanisms are at play, but the point is we are not fully certain what happens in our body when we eat allulose. It just seems to have very positive outcomes for our blood sugar regulation. Now, what about long-term safety? Human trials lasting between 12 to 48 weeks have generally not identified major safety concerns. Some studies have even reported improvements in markers related to liver health and glucose metabolism. That said, we just don't have a lot of long-term evidence on this. I will say that several months into consuming allulose every day, I did do a full blood panel and I got my kidney results back and everything was perfectly healthy and normal. I would love to continue to eat allulose every day and do another kidney panel in several months' time. The reason I personally consume allulose, even with the lack of long-term data, is truly because I feel so great on it. We will discuss that in the next section. Another way I really love to balance my blood sugar is through movement after meals. Today I want to share this beautiful rebounder by Bellicon, which is a great way to balance your blood sugar. By being able to do light movement after eating, your body can shuttle glucose from your blood into your muscles, and this can help regulate our mood and our appetite. Specifically, Bellicon is known for their high quality rebounders. They have very high quality bungees that last a very long time, and this model I have here is wonderful because it's actually foldable and you can store it a lot more easily than other types of rebounders. But more importantly, rebounding is just a really fun, playful, joyous way to fit exercise into your life, and often this mental switch can be the difference between sticking with an exercise routine and falling off. If you would like to try Bellicon yourself, you can click the link below, scan this QR code, or use code SELFCARE at checkout for 10% off any order. Thank you, Bellicon, for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to all things allulose. So allulose is often better tolerated than sugar alcohols such as sorbitol, malitol, or xylitol, but there may be a subsection of people who have a allulose incompatible microbiome. A dose escalation study proposed a practical tolerance threshold of roughly 0.4 grams per kilogram of body weight in a single sitting, or 0.9 grams per kilogram of body weight across an entire day. So you can calculate your own thresholds. Above these levels, digestive symptoms might become more likely, things like bloating, gas, abdominal discomfort. Something to note about allulose is that it is not yet approved in Europe. It's been approved in the US, it's approved in many countries, and the reason it's not approved in Europe is not necessarily that there have been any bad findings, it's just that Europe has a very rigorous approval process for novel foods. So that is what we know with the most confidence at this point. I'm excited to share my personal experience as a little guinea pig who has been eating this every day and has quite an appetite for trying and experimenting with new things. Part 2, my personal experience eating allulose every single day. Perhaps the number one reason that I continue to consume allulose is the way that it makes me feel, especially in my mind. As funny as that sounds, sometimes when I've eaten carbohydrates in the past, I get a bit of a brain foggy feeling. I feel like I'm not as focused. And immediately when I eat allulose following any sort of carbohydrates, I feel like it attenuates this feeling and it keeps me a lot sharper in my mind. And that makes a lot of sense with what we know about how it can blunt the blood sugar spike of other carbohydrates. I'm someone who doesn't do well on very low carb diets. That puts my body into a stress mode. However, I still want to manage my blood sugar and not have crazy swings in blood sugar and also not creep into the pre-diabetic zone. Also, from kind of a mental health lens, when my blood sugar is erratic, I feel moody, I feel sad, I feel not good. So for me, allulose has been a really effective tool in my blood sugar balancing toolkit to make sure that I'm feeling great throughout the day and also that my appetite and my blood sugar is balanced. Now, I really put it to the test earlier this year when I had a gestational diabetes test. Now, I do not recommend anyone do this at all, but I already am quite familiar with my blood sugar. I have used CGMs a lot in the past, so I felt okay kind of, I'll say, throwing away this gestational diabetes test because I was pretty confident that I did not have gestational diabetes. Also, I should note that the number one intervention for gestational diabetes is lifestyle changes. So I think it's fine to preemptively make those lifestyle changes since that would be the treatment anyways before you would go on insulin, which you would hopefully avoid. So essentially how you test for gestational diabetes is you drink a hyper concentrated sugar water drink. Mine was a small little bottle that contained 50 grams of glucose. That is way more than anything I would normally consume and certainly not in liquid form like this. So it is a straight shot of sugar to your body. And I thought this would be a really great opportunity to test out some of my blood sugar blunting strategies. So essentially what happens is you drink this drink, they wait 1 hour, and then you test your blood glucose, and then you get a report back of what your blood sugar was at that moment. So I did a few different things to attenuate that spike from that drink, one of which was consume allulose. So essentially, right after I drank the glucose drink, I immediately took some licks of a cinnamon allulose mixture I had made. And cinnamon is potentially helpful in blunting blood sugar spikes, but there's not nearly as strong evidence as with allulose. So I took some licks from this little powder mixture that I had in my pocket. It probably looks super sketchy, which is why I did this in the bathroom. Then I also drank some water. Drinking water can also help mitigate any blood sugar spikes. Furthermore, I spent that hour standing. I tried to move my legs around a little bit, and this can help shuttle the glucose out of our bloodstream into our muscles, which can again help lower our blood sugar. And the last little adjustment I made to really help blunt the sugar spike of this hyper sugary drink was to eat a protein and fiber rich breakfast earlier that morning. So with these 4 different adjustments, I was very excited to find out what my blood sugar did after 1 hour. And shockingly, this was my blood sugar after drinking a 50 milligram drink of glucose. Now, looking at these results of this little experiment I did, obviously I changed 4 different things to help manage the blood sugar spike. So it's not really clear exactly what effect each variable had. However, from my personal experience and measuring my glucose with a CGM, I can tell you that eating allulose alongside carbohydrates is hugely beneficial for my blood sugar. It helps curb any hunger and also curb any sort of brain fog that I usually get following eating a very sugary or carb-rich meal. When I want to eat something sweet, I don't deprive myself of that sweet thing, but I also add allulose alongside it, which is just wonderful. It's better to add things, I feel like, psychologically than to deprive yourself of things. An example might be if I want a sweet banana, which is, objectively quite a healthy food, but it is high in sugar. I will take that banana and then I will make a little allulose sauce on top. So I might mix some almond butter, cinnamon, and allulose for something very sweet and creamy, and I will put that on the banana, or I will dip the banana in that sauce. It truly satisfies any sweet cravings, and I feel much better for it. So I just feel very satisfied and good afterwards. I feel clear-headed, and that is what keeps me coming back. One of my favorite ways to eat it is in the morning in a bowl of oats. This is my super healthy oat bowl recipe. So we have some steel cut oats would be the lowest glycemic option, but often I'll do rolled oats as well. Then you can add in some protein. For me, I love adding in collagen protein. It is one of my favorite proteins that's easy on the digestive system. It's also great for our bodies, our skin, our nails, our joints. In addition to collagen powder, I will also add some resistant starch. Now, there's lots of interesting research coming out about resistant starch, and I will link one of my favorite videos on the topic down below by Physionic. His channel is wonderful, super evidence-based. He goes into all the studies behind the different topics he talks about, but resistant starch can help lower our visceral fat. And again, it's adding fiber to our meal to help lower the glycemic impact of our meal. In addition to the resistant starch, I will add allulose and cinnamon to further balance the carbohydrates in this bowl. And then I will add some nut butters, some berries, maybe some steamed apple, anything to make it just yummy and delicious and feel very decadent. And this is how I start my mornings, with this bowl of oatmeal. It keeps me full so long, and I just feel so good on it. When I eat a very low carb breakfast, I don't feel good, and it doesn't seem to be good for my body personally. I think another underrated way to use allulose is in delicious savory sauces. A lot of sauces that you might have at dinner, for example, maybe a really nice teriyaki sauce, a miso sauce, a barbecue sauce, they often require some sweetness to help balance the flavor profile, and that sweetness often comes from brown sugar or honey or something else. And I love adding allulose into these savory recipes instead of any sugar, and I can still make really delicious, more nuanced sauces than when I was avoiding sugar altogether. So even if you don't necessarily have a sweet tooth for baked goods or desserts, you might still enjoy using it in savory recipes that require a little bit of sweetness to balance some sourness or some bitterness, and to just add more complex flavors to otherwise quite simple, healthy meals. Now, I do want to note that I have been consuming allulose while pregnant and breastfeeding, and there's probably going to be a lot of people in the comments coming after me for that, because there's still a lot we don't know about allulose. However, it is considered safe to consume in moderation while pregnant. This is a decision to make for yourself. Definitely talk to your doctor about this. One practical thing to note about allulose is that it's about 70% as sweet as sucrose or table sugar. I sometimes even feel like it's less than that, 50%, but I've read in multiple places that it's officially considered to be 70% as sweet. Practically, I also really love that allulose comes in these crystals that caramelize just like sugar, that bake a lot more similarly to sugar. A lot of sugar alternatives don't really behave like sugar in baking and in cooking, and I find that allulose is actually the most similar sugar alternative in terms of cooking and baking, and that's really one of the reasons I love it as well. It's very easy to substitute in and to work with, and it makes for very delicious, kind of chewy baked goods. So that has been my journey with allulose thus far, but I would really love to hear from you guys. Have you tried allulose? Are you a fan? Are you a hater? Are you a skeptic? Please share with us down below. I love when we can explore all different opinions and perspectives in the comments. Please be respectful, but I really love hearing from you guys, even if you don't agree with me, maybe especially if you don't agree with me. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you next time.